I don't know what to do or how to solve this problem, because I feel like there's this, like, there are these conflicting ideas of, like, when you need to move on from someone and then when you, like, need to learn how to just be their friend or whatever. Because I think it happens a lot where people, like, fall in love with their best friend, or they fall in love with a good friend, and then they want to stay with them, but it's like they don't, but they get something from them that's, like, really positive, really good, and something that they don't need to escape from. It's like what they need to escape is this negative emotion, which is, like, keeping them from being able to move on. It's like it's something like an anxiety. It's something like it has to do with, like, hope that you still want to be with them, because I think usually people can't move on and they keep being upset. They keep, like, beating themselves up, or, you know, continuing to mourn the loss of someone because they believe that it'll help them to come back. Even subconsciously, I think they're not fully able to accept the idea of that person, like, not being the one or not being whatever. So they continue to mourn that loss to sort of demonstrate to themselves and to that other person that person matters to them so much so that they can't function without them. So I think that's not helpful. It's like, that's what it is. Like, what has to happen is that person has to lose a sort of hope. And I know it's like, it's a hope thing. That's what it comes down to. Once you lose that hope, once you understand that, like, you're not going to be with them, then you have a decision. Like, do they still have anything left to offer you, or do they have nothing to offer you but just, like, confusion and drama? And it's like, if it's confusion and drama, if it's something that's beating you up because, like, it's because of that friendship, it's not because of you, like, not being able to move on. It demonstrates self-esteem if you're able to, like, show someone you love them, tell them, and then be able to still move on and, like, continue to be healthy within that friendship. Like, that definitely demonstrates self-esteem and just, like, ability to just be a functional being and be cool, because it's not cool to be so emotional and so, like, you know, so traumatized by that person or whatever that experience that you can't, like, be friends. Because that's just, like, not cool. It's cool to just be like, okay, whatever, like, if you don't like me, just keep going, you know, because rejection is something that just, like, happens, and that's just part of, like, trying to find someone. So, I mean, my idea is that, like, usually I think people can continue to be friends because you get a good thing from that person, probably. If you like them so much, they probably offer you something really great in a friendship. Otherwise, if it's just, like, a sexual thing, then I guess, yeah, move on. Like, if you don't have any substance to that friendship and it was just mostly a fantasy, then yeah, like, why do you need to be friends with them? No point. Then you just move on because they have nothing to offer you. You don't move on because you, like, can't deal with all the pain of, like, being in their presence. It's like, if it's so painful to be in their presence, it's probably because you're so attached to them in that, like, you're, first of all, so embarrassed, or you're so unable to have the self-esteem to, like, decide to not like someone who doesn't like you. It doesn't make any sense to be in love with or to be obsessed with the idea of, like, being with someone if that person doesn't want you. It's like, why on earth would you want to be with someone who doesn't want you? That makes absolutely no sense at all. Unrequited love is only a fantasy. It's only ever an illusion, because it's like, unrequited love doesn't make sense. Like, love in the sense of, like, infatuation and fantasy is usually about fantasy for the future. If this person doesn't want to be with you and it's not a where does the fantasy fit in? It's like, your fantasy would be, like, you being together. Your fantasy would be, like, them loving you. Because that's what love and infatuation is. It comes down to you wanting another person to want you. And love also has many forms, but love can also be, like, just wanting another person to be happy. But it's like, you're not going to be obsessed with another person being happy with someone else. Like, you're not going to be obsessedly in love with a person just for the sake of wanting them to be happy. I'm so obsessed with the idea of you being happy. In order to move on, you have to lose hope for that whatever. I've already talked about the losing hope idea, but I think in order to move on, it has to be, like, you have to be capable of being friends with someone who you would have loved. And it comes down to, like, what contributes to that idea or that capability has to do with you accepting that you can't love someone who doesn't love you. That's how people move on in the end. It's like, it's really about just coming to terms with this changed hope and this lost dream. And that's just too bad. Like, disillusionment is cruel. And that's just reality. That's like, that is the pain of heartbreak. There are other things that hurt and there are other heartbreaks, but like that is like the heartbreak that I think is the, like, that's the one, that's the most frequent, I think. It's the most common thing that happens. Because sex is all about fantasy, and the fantasy is almost never in line with the other person's fantasy. You can be friends with someone you loved if you learn to come to terms with and have a high self-esteem. If you cut them from your life, it shows that they have so much of a hold on you. They have so much emotional power over you that they can continue to control you by keeping you away or keeping you coming back or whatever. What you really want to do is lose investment in them. Part of losing investment is learning how to not avoid them too. Learning how to just deal with their presence. That's what I think moving on is about. It's not about like cutting another person from your life, and it's not about continuing to be obsessively friends with them too and just like be so invested in that friendship that you just can't move on. You know, those two things aren't moving on. What's moving on is to learn how to just let them in and out of your presence and not care. You know, moving on is really like moving to the next dream. Meanwhile, they can be there or not be there, and it won't matter because what you care about and what you're infatuated with is something new. That's what moving on is.